The internet thought it had already heard everything there was to hear about this story until now. Because just when fans believed the dust had finally settled, whispers started circulating again, quiet at first, then louder, then impossible to ignore. Screenshots resurfaced. Old interviews suddenly felt different, and behind the scenes, emotions that had been buried for years were quietly boiling back to the surface. Fans are shocked because what looked like peace on the outside was hiding deep fractures on the inside. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on a family situation that many thought was resolved, but insiders say the truth is far more complicated. From late-night phone calls that allegedly changed relationships forever, to tense moments where emotions ran high and loyalty was quietly questioned, this story has layers people weren't ready for. And the craziest part, everyone involved swears they're protecting the same legacy, yet somehow they're standing on completely different sides. Social media has been on fire. Some fans are defending the family at all costs. Others are asking uncomfortable questions that no one wants to answer. And in the middle of it all, silence, long, calculated silence that only made people speculate more. The family was left divided, supporters were confused, and every new clip added fuel to a fire that never truly went out. What really happened behind closed doors? Why did certain relationships suddenly feel strained? And how did moments meant to honor a legacy turn into sources of tension and mistrust? This isn't about rumors. This is about a timeline, one that fans piece together slowly, post by post, reaction by reaction. And once you see the full picture laid out, you might realize this story was never as simple as it was made to seem. Stay with us, because once we start connecting the dots, everything changes. The story didn't explode all at once. It crept back into the conversation quietly, almost politely, the way unfinished business always does. One repost here, one old clip there, a comment under a video that should have been forgotten years ago. At first, fans brushed it off as nostalgia mixed with grief, but then the tone changed. The comments stopped sounding emotional and started sounding suspicious. Behind the scenes, the family was navigating something much heavier than the public ever realized. What many assumed was unity was actually a fragile truce, held together by respect, pain, and a shared promise to protect a legacy that meant different things to different people. It started with disagreements that seemed harmless on the surface. A family member questioned how certain decisions were being made. Another felt sidelined, unheard, brushed off. These weren't public arguments. These were late-night conversations, phone calls that ended abruptly, messages left unread. Emotions ran high, but everyone involved knew one thing: whatever happened next would be watched closely. Insiders claim the tension first became obvious when plans around tributes and public appearances didn't sit right with everyone. One voice reportedly turned sharp during a private discussion. "This doesn't feel right," someone allegedly said. "This isn't how he would have wanted it." Another voice pushed back immediately. "You don't get to decide that alone." Those words changed everything. Fans didn't hear that conversation, but they felt its aftermath. Smiles in public looked forced. Group photos stopped happening. Names that were once mentioned together were suddenly avoided. The silence grew louder than any statement ever could. Social media noticed first. It always does. Supporters began asking why certain family members stopped acknowledging each other online, why posts felt carefully worded, why comments were turned off. Fans are shocked when they realize how much can be said without saying anything at all. One insider described the atmosphere as tense but respectful, the kind of tension where nobody wants to be the first to break character. Everyone was trying to do what they believed was right, but those beliefs didn't align. Then came the first real crack. A clip resurfaced from years earlier, something that had always been brushed aside as emotional grief. This time, fans listened differently. They heard frustration in the voice. They heard hurt between the lines. And suddenly, that old clip felt less like pain and more like a warning sign. Reaction channels picked it up instantly. Comments flooded in. "Why does this sound unresolved?" one fan asked. "This feels deeper than we were told," said another. The family was left divided not just internally but in the eyes of the public. Privately, conversations got heavier. One family member allegedly questioned whether everyone was still on the same page. Another felt accused, misunderstood. "I'm trying to protect him," they reportedly said. The response came fast and emotional. "So am I." "Just not your way." That sentence reportedly echoed long after the call ended. Friends close to the family tried to play peacemaker. Some advised silence. Others suggested clearing the air publicly. But there was fear on both sides, fear of saying too much, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of letting outsiders define a story that felt deeply personal. Meanwhile, fans kept digging. Screenshots were analyzed. Timelines were reconstructed. Every like, every unfollow, every absence became a talking point. The internet turned into a courtroom with everyone playing judge and jury. One family member finally broke the silence, not directly, not aggressively, but enough to send shockwaves. A short post, carefully chosen words, no names mentioned, but the message was clear enough that people knew exactly who it was about. Emotions ran high instantly. Supporters picked sides within minutes. Some praised the honesty, others accused them of stirring drama that didn't need to exist. Why now? Fans asked. Why bring this up years later? The answer, according to insiders, was simple. It never went away. What the public saw as calm was actually exhaustion. Years of swallowing feelings for the sake of peace had taken their toll. And once one person spoke up, it gave others permission to feel out loud. Behind closed doors, conversations turned raw. Accusations weren't shouted, but they were felt. You don't listen, you make decisions without us. You act like your grief matters more. Each statement carried weight because it came from pain, not ego. Family members reportedly reminded each other of shared memories, shared losses, shared promises. But memory alone couldn't bridge the growing gap. Everyone believed they were honoring the same person, yet somehow they were moving in opposite directions. Fans were left confused. One day, a family member would post something that felt healing. The next, another would post something that felt like a response. Even when they weren't addressing each other, the timing felt intentional. The internet ate it up. Reaction videos multiplied. Comment sections turned emotional. "This hurts to watch," one fan wrote. "They should be together, not divided," said another, but others pushed back. "Let them feel. This isn't easy," and that was the truth no one wanted to admit. Grief doesn't follow rules. Legacy doesn't come with instructions. And when money, influence, and public attention get mixed in, even love can start to feel contested. According to those close to the situation, one of the most painful moments came when a family meeting allegedly ended without resolution. No yelling, no dramatic exit, just silence. The kind of silence that confirms nothing has been fixed. Someone reportedly said quietly, "We'll talk later," but later never came. From that point on, things shifted. Decisions were made separately. Communication became formal. Trust, once assumed, now had to be proven. Fans are shocked when they realize this wasn't about one argument or one moment. It was a slow buildup of unspoken frustrations, finally surfacing when no one had the energy to keep pretending. And as the public watched from the outside, one thing became clear: this story wasn't finished, not even close. Because when family pain becomes public conversation, it doesn't fade quietly. It waits, it grows. And eventually, it demands to be heard. As the weeks passed, what once felt like a quiet internal struggle slowly transformed into something impossible to contain. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface started spilling into public view, not through direct statements, but through actions that spoke louder than words. Fans are shocked when they look back and realize how many signs were there all along. One of the first things people noticed was distance. Events that once brought everyone together suddenly felt incomplete. Faces that were expected to be side by side were missing. Names that used to be spoken freely were now avoided altogether. And while no one came out and said it directly, the message felt clear: something wasn't right. Behind closed doors, emotions ran high. Insiders say there were moments when family members questioned whether respect was still mutual or merely performative. "We're smiling for them, not for us," one person allegedly admitted during a tense conversation. Another responded sharply, "This isn't about appearances, this is about control." That word, control, hung heavy in the air. What had once been about honoring a legacy now felt like a battle over who had the right to speak for it. Some family members believed decisions were being made without proper discussion. Others felt burdened, carrying responsibilities they never asked for but felt obligated to uphold. Every choice, no matter how small, became a potential trigger. Then came the reactions from the outside. Fans began breaking things down frame by frame. A delayed post here, a caption edited there, a comment liked by one family member but ignored by another. Social media turned into a magnifying glass, amplifying every move, and with each new observation, speculation grew louder. "Why won't they just talk it out?" fans asked. But talking it out was exactly the problem. According to people close to the situation, conversations had become circular, revisiting the same pain without resolution. One family member allegedly expressed feeling constantly questioned, as if every intention was being doubted. "No matter what I do, it's never enough," they reportedly said, frustration clear in their voice. Another family member didn't hold back either. "You don't see us unless it benefits you," they allegedly replied. "That's not family, that's business." That line reportedly ended the conversation. From that moment on, communication shifted. Messages were shorter, calls went unanswered, group chats went quiet. What once felt like a collective effort now felt fractured into separate lanes, each moving in a different direction. Friends tried stepping in, but even that became complicated. Some felt caught in the middle, unsure who to support without betraying the other side. Others chose silence, believing distance was safer than accidentally saying the wrong thing. Fans are shocked by how quickly loyalty became a public debate. Supporters split into camps, defending one perspective while criticizing another. They're grieving differently, some argued. Others weren't as forgiving. "This should have been handled privately," they insisted. The comment sections became emotional battlegrounds, reflecting the same division happening behind the scenes. Then, just when things seemed like they couldn't get more intense, another moment shifted everything. A subtle interview clip resurfaced, one that had been overlooked for years. This time, viewers paid closer attention. The pauses felt longer. The words sounded heavier. Fans noticed the hesitation, the slight tightening of the jaw, the way certain topics were carefully sidestepped. Suddenly, that old clip felt less like reflection and more like restraint. Reaction videos exploded overnight. "How did we miss this?" viewers asked. "This explains so much," others commented. The family was left divided again, not just emotionally, but in the narrative forming around them. Inside the family, the resurfacing of that clip reopened wounds that had never fully healed. One person allegedly felt exposed, like private pain was being repackaged for public consumption. Another felt validated, believing their concerns had finally been seen. "You see, I wasn't imagining this," they reportedly said. But validation came at a cost. The more fans talked, the more pressure built. Silence was now being interpreted as guilt by some, maturity by others. Every option felt risky. Speaking out could escalate the drama. Staying quiet could let others define the story. Emotions ran high as family members weighed their next move. One insider described a particularly difficult moment when a family member allegedly considered releasing a full statement, laying everything out, start to finish. They reportedly drafted it, deleted it, rewrote it, and deleted it again. The fear wasn't backlash, it was permanence. One said it couldn't be taken back. Meanwhile, the atmosphere within the family grew colder. Meetings felt formal. Laughter felt forced. What used to come naturally now required effort. Even shared memories felt fragile, like touching them might cause another argument. Fans noticed the emotional shift. Posts that once felt warm now felt distant. Tributes felt rehearsed instead of heartfelt. And while everyone claimed unity, the cracks were impossible to ignore. One family member allegedly expressed exhaustion. "I'm tired of fighting for understanding," they said quietly. Another responded with equal weariness. "I'm tired of pretending everything's fine." That mutual exhaustion didn't bring peace, it brought detachment. As time went on, supporters began asking deeper questions. Was this about grief, or was it about power? Was this about protecting a legacy or controlling the narrative around it? The answers depended on who you asked, and that was the heart of the problem. Everyone believed they were right. Everyone believed they were acting out of love. But love, when filtered through pain and public pressure, can turn defensive quickly. The family was left divided, standing on opposite sides of a story they both helped create. And as the internet continued watching, dissecting, reacting, one thing became clear: this wasn't just a disagreement. It was a turning point. Because once trust starts to erode, rebuilding it takes more than shared history. It takes vulnerability, accountability, and a willingness to listen even when it hurts. Whether that would happen remained uncertain. And with every passing day, the silence grew heavier, signaling that whatever came next would be impossible to ignore. By the time the tension reached this stage, it was no longer just about disagreements or miscommunication. It had become about identity, voice, and who felt truly seen within the family. What once lived behind closed doors was now shaping public perception in real time, and everyone involved felt the weight of it. Insiders say the emotional distance grew sharper after a private disagreement allegedly turned deeply personal. Not explosive, not loud, but cutting in a way that lingered. One family member reportedly questioned whether certain sacrifices had ever been acknowledged. Another felt blindsided, insisting they had carried burdens silently for years. Emotions ran high as old wounds resurfaced, layered with newer frustrations that had never fully healed. "You act like I wasn't there," one voice allegedly said, shaking but controlled. "I was there every day," another responded. "You just didn't see it." That exchange, according to people close to the situation, marked a shift. From that moment on, conversations stopped being about solutions and started becoming about validation. Everyone wanted to be understood, but no one felt heard. Meanwhile, fans were watching closely, piecing together what they believed was happening behind the scenes. The internet became flooded with theories, some thoughtful, others reckless. Screenshots were reposted, old quotes were taken out of context, even silence was dissected. Fans are shocked by how quickly speculation became treated like fact. What made things more complicated was how differently each family member processed the pressure. Some withdrew, choosing distance over confrontation. Others leaned into expression, feeling that staying quiet only made things worse. This difference in coping styles only widened the gap. According to insiders, one particularly emotional moment occurred during what was supposed to be a calm conversation about future plans. Instead of progress, it turned into a reflection of everything that had gone wrong. "I don't recognize us anymore," someone allegedly said. No one had a response. That silence wasn't indifference, it was realization. At the same time, outside voices kept growing louder. Friends of the family, some well-meaning and others less so, began offering advice. "You should clear this up," one suggested. "You should protect yourself," said another. Each opinion added pressure, pulling the family further apart instead of bringing them together. Fans were split. Some believed airing everything out publicly was the only way forward. Others felt it would cause irreversible damage. Comment sections filled with emotional debates. "They owe us nothing," some fans argued, "but they owe each other honesty," others replied. The family was left divided not only by their own pain, but by the expectations of millions watching from the outside. Then came another shift, subtle but powerful. One family member posted something that felt different. It wasn't accusatory, it wasn't defensive, it was reflective. A few lines about growth, healing, and boundaries. No names, no details. But the timing made it impossible to ignore. Fans immediately reacted. "Is this about them? This feels like a response. Why now?" The post spread fast, and with it came a wave of interpretations. Some saw it as maturity. Others saw it as passive-aggressive. Insiders claim reactions within the family were mixed. One person reportedly felt relieved, believing the message softened the narrative. Another felt hurt, interpreting it as public commentary on a private matter. Emotions ran high once again. Behind closed doors, there was allegedly a moment where someone asked the hardest question yet. "Do we actually want to fix this, or do we just want to be right?" That question reportedly changed the energy in the room. Because for the first time, it forced everyone to confront their own role in the breakdown. It wasn't just about who said what, it was about who listened, who assumed, and who stayed silent when speaking up might have made a difference. Still, accountability didn't come easily. Pain has a way of blinding people to anything beyond their own hurt. And when grief mixes with responsibility and public scrutiny, even good intentions can feel threatening. Fans noticed a shift after that moment. The tone of posts softened. The frequency of reactions slowed. It didn't mean things were fixed, but it suggested something was changing. Maybe exhaustion had set in, maybe reflection had begun. According to insiders, one family member eventually reached out privately, not to argue, not to defend, but to ask a simple question: "Can we start over?" That question carried more weight than any public statement ever could. The response didn't come immediately. Hours passed, then days. During that time, fans speculated endlessly. Some believed reconciliation was happening quietly. Others were convinced the silence meant permanent distance. The truth, as always, was more complicated. When a response finally came, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't emotional, it was cautious but open. "I don't know how," the reply allegedly said, "but I'm willing to try." Those words didn't fix everything. They didn't erase past hurt, but they cracked the door open just enough to let something new in: hope. Behind the scenes, conversations reportedly resumed slowly. Short calls. Careful words, long pauses. Nobody rushed. Everyone understood that rushing had gotten them here in the first place. Fans are shocked when they realize how fragile healing actually is. It's not loud, it's not viral. It happens quietly in moments the internet never sees. Still, not everyone was convinced. Some supporters questioned the sincerity, others feared the damage was already done. And within the family, trust had not magically returned, it had to be rebuilt piece by piece. There were setbacks, misunderstandings still happened, old habits resurfaced, but there was a noticeable difference. People were listening more than they were reacting. One insider described a moment that symbolized the shift. During a discussion that could have easily turned tense, someone paused and said, "I hear you," not "I disagree," not "you're wrong," just acknowledgement. That moment mattered. It didn't mean the family was suddenly united. It didn't mean the past no longer hurt, but it meant the cycle had been interrupted. As fans continued watching from the outside, many began to realize something important. This wasn't a story about drama, it was a story about people learning how to carry grief without turning on each other. The family was still divided in many ways. Perspectives hadn't magically aligned. But the hostility had softened into something closer to understanding. And while no one knew what the future held, one thing was certain: whatever happened next wouldn't be fueled by silence alone. Because once people choose to speak and listen, the story changes. And this one was still being written. What followed wasn't the dramatic reconciliation fans were expecting, and it wasn't a complete fallout either. It was something far more complicated, a fragile middle ground where intentions were questioned, emotions were guarded, and every step forward came with hesitation. Insiders say that once conversations restarted, the mood was cautious. Nobody wanted to reopen old wounds too quickly. Words were chosen carefully, sometimes too carefully, as if everyone was afraid that one wrong sentence could undo the little progress that had been made. Emotions ran high beneath the surface, but they were being tightly controlled. At the same time, the outside noise never stopped. Fans continued to debate every move. Some believed the family was finally healing. Others felt the damage was permanent, and a growing group insisted that what they were seeing wasn't peace at all, it was strategy. "They're just trying to calm things down," one comment read. "This isn't real unity," another pushed back immediately. "You don't heal grief on a timeline." That split in opinion mirrored what was happening internally. One family member reportedly felt hopeful but guarded. They believed communication was better, but trust was still fragile. Another felt uneasy, sensing that certain conversations were being avoided rather than resolved. "We're talking," they allegedly said, "but we're not saying the hard stuff yet." And that hard stuff was waiting. According to those close to the situation, a major sticking point remained unresolved: how the story had been handled publicly. Some family members felt exposed, believing their pain had been turned into content by outsiders. Others felt misunderstood, arguing that staying silent had allowed false narratives to grow unchecked. "You let them speak for us," one person allegedly said. "I was trying to protect us," another responded. Those two perspectives clashed quietly but deeply. Meanwhile, fans noticed subtle changes again. Posts became less emotional, more neutral. The tone shifted from raw grief to reflective distance. Supporters couldn't decide if this was growth or resignation. Fans are shocked by how different the energy felt compared to just weeks earlier. Then came another unexpected moment. During a public appearance that wasn't meant to be symbolic, a simple gesture caught everyone's attention. A nod, a brief acknowledgement, nothing more, but for fans who had been watching closely, it felt significant. Reaction videos exploded overnight. "Did you see that? That had to be intentional. Maybe they're finally on the same page." Inside the family, reactions to that moment were mixed. Some felt it was a step forward, a sign of respect despite unresolved issues. Others worried it would be misinterpreted as reconciliation when the reality was still far more complex. And that complexity weighed heavily. According to insiders, one family member struggled with the pressure of expectations. "People think healing looks a certain way," they reportedly said, "but that's not how this works." Another admitted feeling overwhelmed by the constant scrutiny. "We can't even breathe without someone reading into it." That pressure began affecting decisions. Plans that once seemed straightforward were now carefully reconsidered. Who speaks? Who stays silent? Who represents the family publicly? Every choice carried emotional weight, and no one wanted to be blamed for another wave of backlash. Friends close to the family noticed the strain. Some urged them to disengage completely from public opinion. Others believed addressing things head-on would finally bring clarity. but clarity felt risky. Once something is said publicly, it can't be unsaid, and the family had already learned how quickly words could spiral out of control. Fans were left divided once again. Some praised the restraint, calling it maturity. Others accused the family of being evasive. "Just tell the truth," one fan wrote, "whatever it is." But even that request revealed a misunderstanding. There wasn't one truth, there were several, each shaped by grief, memory, and perspective. Emotions ran high as the family navigated that reality. One insider described a moment when someone finally acknowledged the root of the tension. Not the arguments, not the posts, not the speculation, but the loss itself. "We never learned how to grieve together," they allegedly said. That realization hit hard. Because beneath all the disagreements was a shared pain that had never been processed as a group. Everyone had been surviving in their own way, assuming others were doing the same. In reality, they were drifting apart while believing they were moving forward. That acknowledgement didn't fix everything, but it reframed the conversation. Suddenly, the focus shifted from who was right to how everyone was hurting. From defending positions to understanding emotions, it wasn't dramatic, it wasn't instant, but it mattered. Fans noticed another subtle change after that. The tone of reactions softened, the speculation slowed. Some supporters even began calling for patience instead of answers. "Let them heal," one comment read. "This isn't our pain to manage." Still, skepticism remained. Years of tension don't disappear overnight. Trust doesn't rebuild itself just because intentions improve, and the family knew that. According to insiders, there were still moments of frustration. Miscommunication still happened. Old habits resurfaced. But there was a growing awareness now, a pause before reacting, a willingness to listen even when emotions flared. One particularly telling moment occurred during a discussion that could have easily turned confrontational. Instead of responding defensively, someone reportedly said, "I need time to think about that." That alone marked progress. The family was left divided in many ways, but no longer completely disconnected. As time went on, fans began realizing something important. This story wasn't moving toward a clean ending. It was moving toward something more realistic, an ongoing process with setbacks, small wins, and unresolved feelings. And maybe that's what made it so compelling. Because behind the headlines, beyond the speculation, this wasn't about drama for the sake of drama. It was about people learning how to coexist with loss, with public attention, and with each other. The future remained uncertain. Some believed full reconciliation was possible. Others thought distance might be the healthiest outcome. And some felt the family would continue operating in this quiet middle space, connected by history, separated by experience. One thing was clear though, whatever happened next wouldn't be decided by the internet. It would be shaped in private conversations, difficult reflections, and moments the public would never fully see. And as fans continued to watch, react, and speculate, the family kept moving forward carefully, imperfectly, but intentionally toward whatever came next. Because sometimes healing doesn't look like unity. Sometimes it looks like learning how to stand apart without tearing each other down. And that lesson was still unfolding. And now it's your turn. You've seen how this story unfolded, not through rumors, not through quick headlines, but through a full timeline of emotions, silence, tension, and moments that changed everything. You've seen how grief can unite people, but also how it can quietly divide them when pain goes unspoken. Fans are shocked by how complex this situation really is, and after hearing everything, one question still lingers. What do you think happens next? Do you believe healing is truly possible here, or do you think some wounds run too deep to ever fully close? Was the silence a sign of maturity, or a way to avoid hard conversations? And when it comes to protecting a legacy, who really gets to decide what that looks like? This is where your voice matters. If this breakdown made you see the situation differently, make sure you hit the like button so more people can hear the full story, not just fragments of it. If you want updates, timelines, and deep dives that cut through the noise and actually connect the dots, subscribe to the channel right now, because stories like this don't end quietly and you won't want to miss what comes next. Most importantly, drop a comment below. Tell us where you stand. Do you see growth happening, or are things just being buried again? Read through the comments, reply to each other, and keep the conversation respectful, because behind every headline are real people dealing with real emotions. And if you know someone who's been following this story from the beginning, share this video with them. Let them see the full timeline and decide for themselves. We'll be watching closely because, as history has shown, silence never lasts forever. Something always comes next. Stay locked in.